First, remove the center wheel cap. Then loosen, but do not remove, the axle nut with a 32mm socket while the car is still on the ground. Now loosen the wheel lug nuts. With the vehicle safely lifted on car jacks, remove the lug nuts and then the tire. Finish loosening and then remove the axle nut using the brake rotor for leverage as needed. Loosen the top and bottom strut to knuckle bolts with an 18mm socket and wrench. Tap the bolts with a wrench or hammer to remove them. Push on the rotor and the strut to get the bolts out if they are slightly stuck. Remove the self-tapping bolt holding the ABS sensor line with a 10mm socket wrench. Use a pair of pliers to pull out the retaining clip for the brake line. Push the brake line downward to allow it to be removed from the assembly. Use a C-clamp to hold the ABS sensor line in place away from the knuckle bracket we are about to move. Use a small sledge to push the axle away from the caliper. Here's a quick look at the cracked tone ring we can better see with the pushed axle. Take note of the hole in the center of the axle. We will use a large Phillips screwdriver to push the axle all the way through the wheel assembly. Push down on the controller arm for additional leverage as needed and remove the axle from the wheel assembly. Wrap a bungee several times around the axle and hang it from the springs at the top of the wheel well. Do the same for the wheel rotor and brake assembly to keep pressure off the attached lines. We need to get all built-up rust off the axle assembly that ultimately broke our tone ring. To do this, I use a flathead screwdriver, a wire brush, brake cleaner, and a rag as needed. It is very important that we get the ledge that the tone ring sits on completely flat. Here's what the surface should look like. Apply silicone brake lubricant to the area where the ring will sit. This will allow us to get the new tone ring in place. Set the new tone ring in place and use the old tone ring as a striking surface. Use a regular hammer to firmly and equally tap the new tone ring into place. Try to get the new tone ring on as evenly as possible. There should be no gap between the tone ring and the axle assembly when it is set in place completely. Inspect on all sides. With the new tone ring in place, we can lower the axle and remove the bungees to return the axle to the wheel assembly. Here is a close-up look of returning the axle into the wheel assembly, making note of the grooves that must match up before pushing through. Return the knuckle back to the strut and throw the bolts back into place. Reaffix the 10mm self-tapping bolt on the ABS line. 15 to 20 foot-pounds of torque here is fine. Place the brake line in place, moving it upward into its assembly, and put the retaining clip back into place with pliers. Use an 18mm socket wrench and another wrench to fully torque the nuts to manufacturer spec of 85 foot-pounds. Reaffix the axle nut and lightly tighten. Throw the wheel back on and lightly tighten the lug nuts back into place. Torque the lug nuts to at least 100 foot-pounds. Torque the axle nut to 214 foot-pounds. Replace your center wheel cover. That's it, the job is done. I hope this helps.